Well, yesterday on the Alex Jones Show, we had a caller call in, Matthew, who said he'd formerly been involved with Anonymous, and he was concerned about things that he'd been seeing going on that he thought were efforts to smear the group. In particular, he talked about a day of rage that was purportedly something that was going to be an anonymous operation. This was something that, as he commented on it, questioned it, he got blocked from the site. So we wanted to have him on to talk a little bit more about Anonymous. And of course, as we all know, if it's an organization without a face and without a name, we can't be certain that he's with Anonymous, but certainly he sounded credible. And he had some comments that he wanted to make about Anonymous's past that I think everybody needs to hear. So joining us now is Matthew. Well, Matthew, you're not an official spokesperson. You want to make that clear. And of course, with a group that doesn't have any name, doesn't have any face, there really isn't an official spokesperson. But you've observed this. You said you've been involved with it tangentially. Tell us a little bit about your involvement and tell us what you want to say about Anonymous.
Well, I guess the main thing that I want to hit is I want to establish kind of the concept of the mask. But as far as my experience, I started back in, it was about 2008, 2009, and before it was, a crime to be with the group. And so when I started, the first thing that was kind of an agenda, I guess, or kind of the thing that we took on as far as an op or an operation, which is how we, label things that we try to do, is I started with the anti-Church of Scientology, and as a collective, as a group, had come to the conclusion that Scientology wasn't really even a religion. It wasn't really a faith. It was just kind of a scam that was just taking people's money. I mean, it really was not helping humanity in any way, shape, or form. And,
that's how L. Ron Hubbard got his start. He got to start scamming and ripping off people who were theosophists, who were Satanists and occultists, but then he went on to found this religion. Sorry, go ahead.
So, no, it's cool. It's, so anyways, and it got to the point where, if those Dianetics guys, they go out and they try to advertise, and what happens is the minute they see one of the Guy Fawkes masks pop up, they just run. They don't even want to deal with us anymore. So it's, it was really a victory that was kind of set us on the path, I guess. And a little while later, I decided to distance myself because of the fact that I noticed that a lot of what I was doing was being monitored. And that's one of the reasons why I wanted to kind of come out today is, I know for a fact that I'm a target right now, and it sucks.
Well, the thing is, we have to all realize that we all are targets. And if we pull back and we're afraid to speak out, they win.
Yeah.
And if we get so distrustful because we realize that we've been lied and we've been tricked and we trust no one, then they win also. So that's a difficult thing because Anonymous doesn't have a face. It doesn't have by definition, there's no names or faces. And so that makes it very easy for the FBI or the CIA or the NSA or any bad actor to come in and be an agent provocateur, presumed to speak for the group and then do bad things in order to destroy the group. They do that with every group then, and that's a long strategy going all the way back to I guess it was most obvious with Lenin and Felix Dzerzhinsky, the first head of the Cheka, the intelligence agency of the old-style Soviets. Every opposition group throughout the world was started by the Cheka, by Felix Dzerzhinsky. And they did it so they could know who their opposition was. So they started creating all these opposition groups just so they would find out who might be activists to oppose them. That's always an issue. People need to be careful, but we need to not be so paranoid and not be so fearful that we get stifled into doing nothing.
Mm. So, and it's a very, so it's a very massive, intimidation as far as that goes. And the other thing that, and it was seen with the Bundy Ranch where there were people that were in there that were causing trouble that they decided to kind of expel from the group. And it even happened in Occupy. We started the Occupy Wall Street movement, and the fight against that, it wasn't about race. It wasn't about, it wasn't a bunch of bums like Fox like to put it, out there trying to destroy everything. It was a group of people that were fed up with the fact that, 1% of the country owns 80% of the wealth. We live in the most unequal distribution of wealth in the world, and they were angry about it. And so the movement was to try and bring attention to that, which it brought attention to it. But unfortunately, and it was the same with every case, is somebody would show up and either throw a Molotov cocktail or run in and hit somebody or hit a police officer, or, something happened, and it was always somebody that nobody knew.
Yeah, exactly.
It was somebody that just kind of randomly showed up out of the blue that had no association with anyone there, and they would start something.
Well, give an example. The one that you called into the show about yesterday, the radio show, was the Day of Rage, going back to August as things were heating up in Ferguson. Tell the audience about that.
Well, I was reading this FBI article, and it said, "Beware Anonymous Day of Rage," and they had all these locations and times where supposedly the anonymous organization was going to create mini Fergusons. And I don't know if you saw that picture I sent in.
Yes.
I tried several times to say, this is a hoax, this is it's a false flag. It's not going to actually happen. I actually went on to the Anon, there's a place where you can look at the ops and you can see which ones are active and which ones aren't. And there is not a single op that says Day of Rage. In fact, it even goes against what the group represents, which is, peaceful opposition. The only group that this would really benefit would be the globalists. And so, and I'm looking down, and so I tried 4 different times to edit it. They deleted my posts every time. And then the 5th time I tried it, they canceled it. They blocked me from the site, essentially, the website administrators. And so I took a picture of me being blocked, and I put that up on Facebook, and I tried to do it 3 times, and every single time they took it off. And so it's like, okay, wow. So, and even me trying to send that picture through my email, I had to throw on a blocker just to stop somebody from, something was happening while I was trying to link the picture to the email.
So they're trying to basically give Anonymous a black eye, or perhaps try to instigate something that's violent and then say that originated with Anonymous. Talk about some of the good things that Anonymous has done that basically have not been talked about by the media.
Well, I don't know if you've heard of Operation Neverland. There was actually the group that we initially went to war with was NAMBLA, and the North American Man-Boy Love Association. And Operation Neverland is an op designed to try and identify and feed police information on potential child molesters and online predators. And so I'm trying to remember her name, but the girl that committed suicide a while back, because pictures of her were posted online and somebody was blackmailing her. And I'm trying to remember her name. She was really, really popular for a while. But Anonymous actually identified the person who was harassing her. But Anonymous had actually worked together, a large group, and had identified the person who incited everything, who was harassing her online and blackmailing her. And they were able to grab the emails, and they fed them to the proper authorities. And he's actually in jail now.
See, I think that's very important when we have something that looks and smells like a false flag, in the sense that there's some suspicious things. We're not being told consistent stories from the government, and they've immediately got a solution, or they've immediately solved the crime. And I think when the internet community at large starts looking at things as they did with the Boston bombing, I think that's a very useful thing. We saw how angry the police got about that. Said, don't look at anything except what we give you. I mean, we need to have that kind of openness and transparency. And I think a crowdsourcing investigation like that can really turn up a lot of valuable evidence. It certainly can expose fraudulent actions by governments.
And so, I think it's a very important aspect. And the other thing is that, the Anons wanted to do this to show that we're not against the people. The only people that we're a threat to are, corrupt politicians. I mean, we're definitely a threat to the system. And that's really what kind of, encouraged this concept that, Anons are terrorists and da-da-da-da-da. And you look down in the Day of Rage post, and I was looking at a lot of the comments that people were saying that we're allowed to stay there. And they were saying, you show me rage, I'll show you rage. And, da-da-da-da-da. I mean, it just goes on, and one person said, they're just a bunch of leftists in Halloween masks, which kind of, I think it's funny because to the conservative Republican side, the Anons are all leftists. They're all Obama supporters and that kind of deal. And then to the leftists, they're all a bunch of, essentially terrorists, for lack of a better word,
Yeah, well, it's very easy. Like I said, when they can't see your face, it's very easy to demonize people. But of course, the police and SWAT teams have taken to wearing masks all the time as well. So just wearing a mask doesn't make somebody evil. And as you're aware, they're putting laws on the books throughout the different states to make it illegal to wear masks, to make it illegal to even wear hoodies, because they want to optimize their facial recognition software and make sure they know where everybody is and what everybody is doing. So where do we go from here, Matthew?
As far as the next project or the next operation that's going on, I don't know if you've ever heard of Operation Bluebeam.
Mm-hmm. Yes.
But it falls into a lot of different categories. One is the dehumanization and over-sexualization of children. And so I don't know if you've checked out the way that schools are teaching sex ed now, but I mean, I don't think homosexuality needs to be explained in great detail to a 6-year-old.
Right, right.
You know?
Well, we know that this is a major preoccupation of pretty much everybody in power. I mean, this is the news that's breaking this week. The royal family's connection to pedophile rings. We've had Westminster connections to pedophile rings that were centered around entertainers like Jimmy Savile.
Yeah.
We also see that our royalty, Bill Clinton and others in American politics, have been involved in these very same pedophile groups. So this is something that seems to be a characteristic, a common denominator of the people who are in power. So it doesn't surprise me that they would start feeding that through the educational system that they control.
Oh yeah, and the whole idea is to dehumanize. The idea is that you can't be a homosexual, for one, because that's against God, and you can't be a non-homosexual because that's intolerant. So you got to be somewhere in the middle. You know, you can't be male and be proud. You can't be female and be proud. You got to be somewhere in the middle. So it's like it's taking people and breaking down what they are and turning them into essentially organic machines. And this gets even deeper. And I had a little bit of a clip I was going to show you. It's talking about designer babies and the idea that using nanite technology to essentially alter the DNA of a child, or digitally figuring out how a child is going to be based on the parents, being able to do this. And I thought it was interesting. And the idea, though, is that he's saying that designer babies or choosing the genetics for a child is similar to choosing a school for a child, or choosing a foster family for a child, or something to that extent. And it's like, we're going to choose genetics that way.
Well, of course, that's going to be the way it's going to be sold to people. First it's going to be, look, this is your choice. Then they're going to say, well, you know what? We've got the ability to make these choices, but we're going to take that choice from you, and we're going to exercise it as the government. That's what's behind I guess we should call them cyber cars. I've been calling them computer-controlled, computer-driven, government-controlled cars. Maybe we just ought to call them cyber cars that are coming, because that's the whole focus, it seems like, the major focus of the Consumer Electronics show that's going on this week. And that is a focus of the government in order to control transportation. So they offer this out there, say, isn't it nice? You can have a choice of whether you want to drive your car or whether you want the car to drive itself. But it won't be long before they're going to take away that choice of you driving, and they're just going to control where, when, and how you go anywhere.
Yeah, kind of the iRobot mentality.
Yeah. Yeah. Let's talk about what I think is going to be coming up, and that is yet another push to get CISPA through. We saw, in light of this Sony hack, whoever did it, and we've had many cyber experts come out and present their case to the FBI as if the FBI really would listen to them. I think it's great that they make this technical case of them, but it struck me odd that they would not really realize that the FBI is the one trying to sell people this agenda. I want to play that clip from Fox News where Greta Van Susteren and Catherine Herridge talk about that.
Cyber warfare, and in this particular case, what happened at Sony was so destructive, it was like dropping a bomb on that corporation.
All right, you were quoted saying that talk about we don't want to be on the defensive. Well, it strikes me as a little bit odd, because we have known about this risk for a very long time. We've had Mike Rogers, chairman of the Intelligence Committee and ranking member on Dutch Ruppersberger,
and the NSA,
and they've been talking about this for a long time. And all of a sudden, suddenly, the administration wakes up and says, "Oh my God, this could be an attack, a cyber attack."
Look, the seminal events in terms of cyber warfare happened at least 3 years ago. Stuxnet on Iran's nuclear facility that destroyed the centrifuges.
Your comments about that, Matthew?
All right. Well, the interesting thing about it, and this is, kind of something that's been being pushed around online, kind of in the more discrete areas, but I've been reading a lot about the fact that Anons actually believed that this was a false flag. And it's really evident in the sense that, you listen to them talk. They're fear-mongering. They're using words like war, bomb, explosion.
Oh, yeah, absolutely.
They're really trying to incite this. And I remember in the video, when I was watching Fox News, they mentioned, it sounded like a march to war. We need to go in there and we need we need to get them back. We need to show them that America's not going to stand for this. And, you know, I mean, they're, you know, and then, you know, coincidentally, North Korea's internet gets shut off the next day. You know, who'd have thought?
Yeah, if these guys are such great hackers, they can't protect their internet from completely being shut down. I think it's very interesting because they basically talked about three aspects here at Fox. They said, this is war. This is really seriously dangerous. They said, Obama's been asleep, even though we have been warning them. Well, who is the we? Besides Fox News, they're talking about Mike Rogers, the guy who has brought up CISPA over and over again, the guy who thinks that the NSA can do no wrong, should have no laws controlling them. And then they say, and this has happened before. And the example, the very first example she gives is Stuxnet. We all know now, after looking at Stuxnet, we know that that came from American and Israeli intelligence. So they justify this, they offer this as a problem, and they've got their solution, which we've had offered to us so many times, from SOPA, PIPA, ACTA, CISPA twice. Now we're going to get CISPA 3. When Obama talked about this hack on Sony, he even used the language that they use for the CISPA acronym, the Cyber Intelligence Sharing. That's the CIS and CISPA. They're definitely coming back with this again.
Well, and the interesting thing about it, and I noticed it when I was trying to post, is, you know, I mean, net neutrality, which I think is interesting because the actual net neutrality is really a great thing. But that's always the opposite when it comes to legislation.
Yes. And of course, the FCC has been on both sides of this issue. They really merely want to assert their bureaucratic control over the internet. They don't care how they do it. Once they get it there, it's going to be like the income tax. It starts out very small, or any other thing that they do. It starts out with a very small footprint, or they may do it in the pretense that you think it's something that needs to be done, and then it's going to grow into a bureaucratic empire, into a monster, and they're going to control and shut down the internet. They're coming at it with CISPA, and they're coming at it with TPP, and they're going to come at it with the FCC. It's going to be a multi-pronged attack this year to control the internet.
Well, and the thing is, and there's a couple aspects to that, you know, the suspicion that I have is, you know, and I've been, you know, talking about it with my dad and everything too, is the sense that that a lot of this is already here. It seems like it's kind of like the attack on Naboo. You know, I'm going to make it legal. Don't worry. You know, and it's like the attack's already happened. It's just now they got to legalize it and get permission to do it.
Yes, that's the way they operate. Well, tell us a little bit more about, before we finish, tell us a little bit more about Anonymous and the different levels of Anonymous, and maybe how you were involved with it, because some people, we can't vet the fact of whether or not you're anonymous. We're just accepting your word for it at this point. So just tell us a little bit about Anonymous from your perspective.
Well, if you actually look at the real definition of anonymous, or at least the ideals, technically you're anonymous, and I'm anonymous, and my dad's anonymous, and George W. Bush, he's anonymous, and everybody's anonymous, because the idea behind the mask is simply that there's no age, there's no race, there's no gender. You're simply a human being with words, and those words form ideas, and those ideas can't be something that can be killed. You can kill the person behind the mask, but you can't kill the ideas that the words create.
Yes.
And so that's the definition, or that's the whole concept behind having it, is it gets rid of any of the prejudice that could be, you know, taken out of context. And oftentimes we use our eyes to try and listen versus our ears. And so really that's the backbone behind the mask. That's why it exists.
And, you know, along that line, that's kind of really what they sell us each time we have a presidential election. You know, we get two faces that we can identify with, and we can like Obama because he's a young black man, or we can like Romney because he looks like a traditional fighting whitey kind of guy. You know, so they put these two up there, but the ideas behind them, the people who control them, are the same for either one of them. So it's one idea, but with two faces. So what you've got with Anonymous is you've got an idea without a face, is what you're saying.
Yep, essentially. And it's, you know, it's been great as far as getting the message across. It gets the message across just fine. It also helps us to, you know, to work well, you know, as far as operations go. We work really well together because nobody's really outranking each other. Nobody's pulling rank. And so it's a very, you know, kind of a beautiful thing. It's almost I wouldn't say communism, but it's like, you know, just a universal deal on a small scale where everybody's looking out for each other. So more like libertarianism, I suppose. And that's the other thing I was going to mention too, is most of the Anons are actually libertarian. And you know, the funny thing is we advocated for Ron Paul, really supported him. You know, a lot of us, you know, fully promote, you know, the right to bear arms, things like that. But at the same time, it's like, well, if I've got the right to bear arms, what right do I have to go take something else from somebody? You know what I mean? Like, you know, the idea is that, well, let's just all not take anything from anybody, and we'll just call it good.
Yeah, that's right. You can't have freedom is one thing you can't have unless you're willing to let everybody else exercise at the same time. Yes.
The other thing that, is a big issue is the fact that, so if the Anons are going to be, more like Tea Party members, then, there's the other side of the spectrum is that we're totally cool with, the group's totally cool with, homosexuality and things like that as well, too. They don't have any problem with that. They have a problem with exposing little kids to that before they're ready to actually decide that for themselves. They got a big problem with that. Mm-hmm. We have a very big problem with pedophilia and things like that, as well as, being a predator online and going after children. I mean, that's a big no-no. That's something that, you're not going to hear the end of something like that. And those are the kinds of people that end up, getting essentially exposed to either information about them sent to the police department wherever they live or, stuff like that. That's the information that'll get fed out. But within the organization itself, you have three groups, essentially. You have your under guy, or kind of the guys that are kind of in the background, the coders, and they actually they refer to everybody else as mortals, which I think is kind of funny, is to imply that they've ascended. But you don't really get to talk to them. I mean, you can talk to a recruiter who might be able to get you in contact with something like that, maybe. But the only one that's actually been exposed is Commander X. I don't know if you've heard of him, but he's the only one that's actually come out and said, "Oh yeah, it's me." But most of the guys behind the scenes, they're very difficult to get a hold of, and you wouldn't know who they are, and they would never, under any circumstance, talk to anyone.
And let me ask you this, Matthew: how do you know that those guys aren't? It isn't, Hayden at the NSA at the top. I mean, how do you verify that people are who they say? I mean, that's the real problem within even an open organization. The real problem is infiltrators and counterintelligence. So how do you know that you're dealing with legitimate people?
Well, the thing is, if it was Hayden and he was trying to push a globalist agenda, he wouldn't be very successful. The way that Anons work is an idea gets put out, and if it's a good idea, then the collective will roll with it. And so, the traditional idea, and that's not to say, because there's a couple other groups here. There's one other group that's kind of where I fell into the category, and that's the activist side. And they're the ones that, they're putting videos on YouTube, and they're trying to educate the public and wake people up. And, I'd say a large majority of them probably listen to the Alex Jones show. But these are the guys that are more journalists and movie creators, videographers, people that you'd see standing in between an angry crowd and the police, and that kind of sense. And so they're the more active foot soldiers, I suppose. And so, when I was part of the group, that's kind of where I fell in, was more of an activist side. I never even wore the mask, actually. I had the mask just kind of on like a necklace thing, and it was just kind of there.
Well, so and of course, as you pointed out, it can be dangerous in this kind of environment to even exercise your First Amendment rights. I mean, look at Barrett Brown. It's like, when he had, as Julian Assange talked about, one of the major charges against him right now is the fact that he tweeted out a quote from Fox News, essentially saying just to assassinate Julian Assange, and the FBI said he's talking about us, and they're still maintaining that that's the case, even though it was a quote from Fox News, and they never did anything to Fox News for saying, with not joking, but saying that Julian Assange ought to be just shot by the government. They never did anything to them, yet they would come after him for quoting what they said about somebody else and saying he's saying it about us. So it can be very dangerous to just link to information that somebody else has posted on the internet. That was one of the other charges I had against Barrett.
Yeah, actually, there's several people that have either been killed or imprisoned for that kind of deal. And actually, there's a very long list of Anons that have been arrested just for posting links. But, and that was one of the reasons why I kind of got out of it, because people started disappearing, which was getting a little bit nerve-wracking. But the idea that, everybody kind of makes up their own choice, their own mind. And so that, just like anything else, just like the police department, you're going to have corrupt people that are in the police department. That doesn't mean that all police officers are bad. That's right. You're going to have people that are politicians. I'm going to say that there are some politicians out there that are really trying to help, but they're getting overwhelmed, or they're getting blackmailed, or heck, even Barack Obama sounded like Ron Paul when he started off in 2008. So, I was all for total government transparency, and You know, I thought that was great.
Yeah.
You know, so I mean, you know, I voted for him the first time because he promised that.
He told people what they wanted to hear. He told people what they really wanted, and they did just the opposite. He did it much harder, much faster, much farther than W ever did, didn't he?
Oh yeah, oh yeah. So you know, there's that, and then I'll get into the third group here, and this is the one that's really difficult to deal with. Is the third group, usually being called flamers. It's kids. It's the new members, the ones that are really young, that didn't actually fall into the ideals of the group. They didn't really, you know, learn the message that we're trying to put out. And so they go on and they'll learn a couple of tricks or whatever and go deface a website for no reason or you know, something like that. And they're usually the ones that are getting arrested. Every week you see a FBI post that comes out that says, "We caught the leader of Anonymous." So,
and I think it's important too. You know, we see the protests about the police brutality. A lot of times people who are not even deliberately trying to be agent provocateurs or not a part of a counterintelligence operation, they will do incredibly stupid and non-productive things.
Yeah.
And the way they protest. And certainly, you know, things like killing innocent people who haven't had anything to do with a particular crime. I mean, that's the ultimate thing to take down a movement. But yeah, that's a situation that, of course, applies to Anonymous as well with these low-level hackers who are doing things.
Yeah, well, and they're not just hackers. I mean, a lot of them, I mean, they're script kiddies, which is the lowest rank, essentially. You're using other people's programs to try and do things. So they don't actually know how to code. They don't know how to do any of that stuff. They just go on and, you know, hey, I heard this thing. If I use this right here, then it should do this. And then a lot of them aren't even behind proxies. They just get caught all the time. And it's funny because these script kiddies, these guys that don't know anything about tech, they go in and you know, they're on their dad's computer or, you know, something like that. And a lot of times they're not even hacking. They're just going in and they're either making fun of or ripping on other people. And they really just use the Anon thing as more of a like a hype. You know, they want to hashtag and put Anon after everything they say, or you know, they like the mysterious aspect of it, they like the popularity aspect of it, but they're not really there to actually try and make a difference.
Well, it all still boils down to an information war. You know, you really have to, when you look at something like the Occupy movement, I think one of the reasons that it had so many problems and so many people pushed back against it was they identified a problem, but they didn't understand the source of the problem, and they didn't really offer a legitimate solution. So it's one thing to see a problem and just strike out blindly if you're concerned about police brutality, going out and burning down black businesses, even if you think this is racist based. And it's not, you know, that there's things that you do that if you just strike out blindly without looking at it. So it really is an educational issue. And that's why we wanted to have you on. You called into the show and spoke a little bit about some of this stuff. I thought it'd be good to have people think a little bit more broadly about Anonymous. There's issues there. It's very hard for us to sort out from the outside. To understand the good things that Anonymous has done, to understand some of the bad things that are being done on the inside, and understand that people can come into any group under false pretenses, and they can do good or bad things that get attributed to the group.
Yeah, I don't know if you ever heard of Operation Jubilee at all, but Jubilee actually was an attempt to stop the issue with the Occupy movement. And so what we did was we started doing a citizen's arrest on anybody that started inciting violence. And that was from our own ranks too. And the problem was there were so many saboteurs that popped in that like it became impossible to arrest them all. We got flooded with so many people. It just got ridiculous. Like,
yeah, absolutely. Well, that's the way that unfortunately, that's the way that they operate. And it's something that is very effective. That's why they continue to do it along with false flags to infiltrate organizations. Thank you so much, Matthew. We're out of time. We've had a very long interview, but thank you so much for coming forward and speaking about what you've observed around Anonymous. Thank you so much.
All right. Thank you.
Well, I really appreciate Matt talking to us. We don't have any way to verify whether or not he's anonymous. What he said sounded credible to us, but of course, with an organization that has no name and face, you can never know for sure. Nevertheless, what the points that he was making about Anonymous are very valid points. We need to understand that they've done some very positive things, and we also need to understand that like any other organization, people can do things, whether they're anonymous or not. People can infiltrate an organization and make it look bad. The government does that with each and every organization. And we should understand as they try to sell us on CISPA yet again, and we know they're going to do that, Obama is already using the language of CISPA, talking about cyber intelligence sharing. As they give that to us for a third time, we need to understand that it is the government that has created these exploits in the past. As Aaron Swartz, the man who took it down the first time it came, pointed out, the government funds these exploits, and the government is the one who primarily uses them, just as we saw with Stuxnet. And yet Fox News uses that as a case for why we need to have CISPA. No, we need to have control of our secret organizations, CIA, NSA, and now even the FBI and most of the rest of the government. They're the ones now who are wearing the masks. They're the ones who don't want to be seen. They're the ones who don't have any transparency. And we need to make sure that we have control and transparency of our government. Well, that's it for tonight's news. If you're watching this on YouTube, please subscribe to our YouTube channel. And if you're not a Prison Planet TV subscriber, please become a subscriber and support our operation financially. You can share that with up to 20 other people, and you can also share Alex Jones's documentaries. And as we just pointed out with Matthew, the key thing is for people to understand not only what the problems are, but to understand what's behind these problems. Not just get angry at the system, but to understand where this is going. Well, join us again tomorrow night at 7 Central, 8 p.m. Eastern.
Every year we make resolutions to lose weight and get in shape. And the truth is, it's hard, even with diet and exercise, because of toxic food and our environment that is stressing our bodies more than ever before. Working with experts in nutrition and biochemistry, I found that super high-quality nutraceuticals, in addition to my diet and exercise, were the answers that synergistically worked. I could see the drastic changes every day with the amount of weight I've lost, my increased stamina, and more of a twinkle in my eye. That's why we are now so excited to launch the InfoWars Life Resolution Pack, combining 3 essential formulations: oxygen-based cleanser Oxy Powder, the Secret 12 bioavailable vitamin B12, and your choice of super female or super male vitality. Now all available at a discounted price to you and your family to bring in the new year and make 2015 a true success. That's InfoWarsLife.com or 888-253-3139. 2015 is the year to do it, and it all starts at InfoWarsLife.com.
Yes, these men and their hypnotized followers call this a new order. It is not new, and it is not order.
You are watching the InfoWars Nightly News, which airs 7 p.m. Central at InfoWarsNews.com. And your support is helping us defend liberty worldwide.